Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Fels again. Guess what I found? So excited. I was able to find the wild robot. And so I thought I would start by picking up where we left off. We're starting on chapter 59, which is called The Spring. And if you recall where we left off, Roz was thinking that her purpose was to just help others. So here we go, chapter 59, The Spring. Dripping water, flowing water, splashing water. Winter's blanket of snow and ice was finally beginning to melt. White was fading away to expose the grays and browns that had been hidden beneath. Little green buds were appearing all over. Crowds of bright flowers were rising up from the dirt. And soon the island would be bursting with rich scents and colors. At long last, it was spring. The lodgers returned to their own homes. The hibernators emerged from their secret places. Roz roamed across the island and checked in with the beavers and the bears and all the friends she had missed. Then the robot went home to work in her garden. After the bitterest winter anyone could ever recall, life was slowly returning to normal. Boys and girls, doesn't that sound a little bit like foreshadowing? Like maybe something is going to happen that's not so normal? Here's a picture. Can you see that okay? However, it was a quiet spring. There were fewer insects buzzing, fewer birds singing, fewer rodents rustling. Many creatures had frozen to death over the winter, and as the last of the snow melted away, their bodies were slowly revealed. The wilderness can be ugly sometimes, but from that ugliness came beauty. You see, those poor dead creatures returned to the earth. Their bodies nourished the soil, and they helped create the most dazzling spring bloom the island had ever known. Chapter 60, The Fish. Help! Help! He's got my tail! Paddler was splashing and screaming in the pond. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver were nowhere to be seen, so Roz picked up a fallen tree branch and stomped into the shallows. Grab on to this, she said as she reached out with the branch. Paddler grabbed it with his big teeth, and the robot lifted him up out of the water. And there, hanging from the young beaver's tail, was Rockmouth, the grumpy old pike. In one quick movement, Roz pulled in the branch and gripped the fish with her two hands. Paddler flopped into the water where his parents suddenly appeared. What is wrong with you, Rockmouth? Mrs. Beaver dragged her son away. You've always been a nuisance, but this time you have gone too far. Do us all a favor, Roz, and toss him to the vultures. I cannot do that, said Roz, but I might be able to help. Roz placed Rockmouth in a deep puddle near the pond where he couldn't swim away. Then she waited for the fish to explain himself. Well, fish aren't very talkative, especially grumpy old fish like Rockmouth. But eventually he opened up to the robot, and before long she was waving for the beavers to come join them. What do you think Rockmouth told Roz? And do you think it's going to change the way the beavers feel? Let's see. Rockmouth used to live in the river, said Roz as the beavers shuffled over. But you trapped him here when you built your dam. He has been angry about it ever since. That doesn't give him a right to attack my son, hollered Mr. Beaver. It most certainly does not, hollered Mrs. Beaver. Well, I'd be upset too, said Paddler. I'd hate to be kept away from my home. Mr. Rockmouth, you should have said something sooner. The fish looked up from the puddle with a frustrated expression that meant, I tried to, but no one was listening. Well, the situation had to be fixed, and you can guess who rose to that occasion. Roz was determined to get Rockmouth back to his home. After she explored the nearby waterways, it became clear that she would have to carry the pike through the forest and across the great meadow to the nearest bend in the river. I need a large container, said Roz to the beavers. Something I can fill with water so Rockmouth can breathe while I carry him home. I could make it myself, but I thought you might like to help. It couldn't have been easy to overcome her anger with Rockmouth, but after Mrs. Beaver had a chance to cool off, she finally came around. I suppose we're partly to blame for this whole situation, she muttered. Muttered, wasn't that one of our words? Then the beavers did the right thing, and together they carved out a wooden barrel for the fish. Here you go. Mrs. Beaver rolled the barrel over to the puddle where the robot and the fish were waiting. This should work nicely, Rockmouth. I hope you are happy back in the river. Rockmouth just flicked his tail in a way that meant, will somebody please take me home now? Roz filled the barrel with water and a grumpy fish, and then they were off. She carried Rockmouth through the forest and across the meadow until she was standing on the riverbank. Welcome home, said the robot. Then she tipped the barrel and the fish plunked into the river. Rockmouth's face poked above the surface. He flashed a big toothy grin, and then he quickly swam away. And that is the end of the chapter.